Self-fulfilling prophecy. Walter and Bell claimed the alternate universe posed an existential threat, but they may have created the very conflict they feared through a bootstrap paradox. In the 1970s, Walter and Bell discovered the alternate universe through LSD-enhanced experiments and constructed a trans-dimensional window to observe it. They began copying advanced technologies visible through the window and selling them to the U.S. military. Bell wrote the ZFT Manifesto, describing an incoming war between universes, establishing a defensive narrative. Cortexiphan trials began before Walter ever crossed universes, allegedly to prepare children as soldiers for this impending conflict. However, the red universe remained completely unaware of the blue universe's existence until Walter forcibly crossed over to save Peter in 1985. By crossing universes to retrieve Peter, Walter created massive dimensional damage that initiated the pattern, the exact phenomenon they'd been supposedly preparing to defend against. The Cortexiphan children were only needed because Walter created the problem. Without his crossing, no war would have occurred. This creates a causal loop where their fear of invasion directly caused the invasion they feared. This theory suggests one of science fiction's most compelling causality paradoxes. The show may have been arguing that fear and preemptive action are more destructive than any external threat. The brilliance is that no character in the show realizes this, making the audience complicit in understanding a tragedy that the protagonist never fully grasp. Bell's multiversal Gambit. William Bell appears differently across timelines, sometimes heroic, sometimes villainous, suggesting he may have been playing a larger game than anyone realized. In the original timeline, covering seasons 1 through 3, Bell helps the Fringe team, despite conducting morally questionable research with Walternate, including creating shapeshifters. Bell claims he's helping Walter stop the observers, but later betrays the team, leading them directly to the invasion force. In season 4's alternate timeline, where Peter never existed, Bell becomes overtly villainous, working with David Robert Jones to create his own universe. Some viewers theorize the original Bell was a double agent working with Walternate to gather intelligence while appearing to support Walter. Another interpretation suggests David Robert Jones, who worked for Bell and remained alive in season 4, radicalized Bell in that timeline, fundamentally changing him. Bell sacrifices himself in season 2's finale, transferring his consciousness into Olivia's body, yet somehow reappears in season 4 already embedded in Amber. The inconsistency may suggest Bell was always pursuing the same end goal across timelines, creating a new universe free from both the observer threat and the consequences of Walter's original crossing. If Bell's grand plan was to reset reality entirely, his actions as both ally and villain would be consistent with that singular objective. This would make him the show's most intellectually consistent antagonist, not evil, but operating on a 40-year chess game that viewed the Fringe team as necessary pieces. Bell becomes more fascinating as an antagonist if he's not simply corrupted by Jones, but rather following a 40-year plan that predates the show's events. This reframes the entire series as Bell's attempt to undo the damage Walter started by crossing universes, making the finale's timeline reset potentially Bell's ultimate victory, achieved posthumously through the plan he left behind. Peter's quantum paradox. Peter Bishop is the only singular character in Fringe's entire multiverse. There's no Peter in the alternate universe or parallel timelines, but theorists argue he may not belong to either universe at all. When Walter crosses to the alternate universe and takes Peter to save him from a fatal illness, he disrupts the balance between dimensions. In the original timeline, before Walter's interference, the alternate Peter would have survived because September distracted Walternate at the crucial moment when he was perfecting Peter's cure. Peter's existence in the blue universe creates a paradox. He shouldn't exist there, yet his presence becomes the linchpin for every major event across 5 seasons. By season 3, Peter is erased from existence after activating the Doomsday Machine, and the entire timeline resets without him. In season 4, Peter exists only as a ghost, physical but unremembered, with no one aware he should exist in their reality. Some theorists suggest Peter exists in a state of quantum superposition, simultaneously belonging to both universes, and neither. His unique status explains why Peter is the only character who can operate the machine, and why his presence is essential to every solution. The observers may have been manipulating events to ensure Peter's existence as a specific variable needed for their time travel calculations. Peter's impossible existence raises questions about the nature of identity in a multiverse. If he doesn't truly belong anywhere, his entire journey becomes existentially tragic, a man defined by being from the wrong place, always crucial because he's fundamentally displaced. Machine Bootstrap Mystery. The machine that appears throughout Fringe was supposedly created by Walter in 2026, yet it must have existed in the past for the Fringe team to discover it. This creates a causal loop that may never have a beginning. In Season 3, viewers learn the machine was built by Walter Bishop decades into the future to save both universes. Walter somehow sent the machine back through time by throwing it into a wormhole, scattering its pieces across history. The pieces appear in Raiden Lake, where the original transdimensional opening was created, suggesting a buried technology that predates human civilization. Yet, Walter could only build the machine using technology he develops after building the device's pieces himself, creating a grandfather paradox. Some theorists believe the machine was originally created by the observers, or future humans, as part of a larger plan to ensure their own existence. Sam Weiss's mysterious knowledge of the machine and his access to ancient texts suggest he may have been a conduit for information about this future technology. If the observers themselves created the machine and sent it back through time, it would explain how it can manipulate universes more effectively than observer technology. The alternative theory is that the machine represents a genuine bootstrap paradox, a causal loop with no origin point, violating causality itself. Walter may have been merely the executor of a plan rather than its originator, using future knowledge implanted in his subconscious to recreate the machine. The fact that Walter tinkers with the machine before sending it back suggests the device gets progressively more refined with each iteration. The machine represents Fringe at its most philosophically complex, not just asking what if, but how can causality function when effects precede causes? Whether intentional or accidental, the machine creates a permanent paradox in the show's logic. September's forbidden choice. Observer September violated the Prime Directive countless times to save individuals, but his greatest transgression may have been choosing emotion over logic and creating the Observer Civil War single-handedly. September is programmed to observe only, never interfere, yet he repeatedly saves Walter, Peter, and Olivia across the series. In 1985, September deliberately distracted Walternet at the exact moment needed to alter Peter's fate, directly causing Walter's desperate crossing. Later, September steals a child, observer named Michael, from execution, explicitly violating protocol because the child was his biological son. This act of parental love represents an emotional choice that observers supposedly eliminated through genetic modification. Michael exists as an anomaly, an observer with retained human emotions, precisely because September couldn't eliminate his paternal instinct. By the final season, Michael becomes crucial because he proves to future scientists that emotions and high intelligence aren't mutually exclusive. Some theorists argue that September's emotional choices inadvertently triggered the observer invasion. By saving Michael and showing emotion, he may have catalyzed the very future events he tried to prevent. September's compassion for humans and his son directly contradicts observer logic, suggesting he may represent an evolutionary branch of observers that the cold observer leadership considered a threat. If the observers eventually develop emotional capacity, as Michael suggests, it may not be because of September's tampering, but because September's existence proved it was always possible. September becomes the show's tragic hero if his attempts to maintain compassion actually doomed both universe timelines. His greatest virtue, his refusal to abandon emotion, may have been his civilizational catastrophe. Michael's evolutionary impossibility. Michael is an observer child who shouldn't exist, born with emotions that the observer species eliminated millions of years in their past. His existence challenges everything about observer nature. Observers evolved from humans approximately 600 years in the future by eliminating emotions and maximizing logical capacity. Michael is a hybrid who retains full emotional capacity despite being biologically observer. When observer scientists discovered Michael, they classified him as a defect and scheduled him for immediate termination. Yet Michael's existence proves that emotions and advanced intelligence aren't mutually exclusive, contradicting the observer evolutionary path. September steals Michael to present him as evidence to future scientists that a better evolution is possible. The final plan involves sending Michael to the point where observer modification began, to convince scientists to create emotionally capable observers instead. If successful, this would create an entirely different observer species, one that never invades Earth because they possess human moral constraints. Michael represents not just an individual, but an entirely alternate future for humanity. Michael embodies the show's central question: is intelligence or emotion the defining characteristic of humanity? His mere existence is revolutionary. By the way, if you're enjoying this deep dive, I create videos like this all the time. Subscribing would really help me out. Altered Olivia's consciousness. When Peter was erased from the timeline at the end of Season 3, a new Olivia replaced the original. But what happened to the original's consciousness, which held memories of Peter? Due to her cortexiphan enhancements, the original Olivia developed memories of a life with Peter that technically never happened in her universe. These memories were proof of Peter's existence when he tried to force his way back into the timeline. When the timeline was rewritten and Peter disappeared again, this original Olivia, the one with the Peter memories, vanished too. The new Season 4 Olivia begins experiencing phantom memories of Peter, suggesting a merging of consciousness rather than replacement. Her memory of Peter persists, even though he technically shouldn't exist in her world. The show never explains explicitly explains whether the original Olivia's consciousness was subsumed, erased, or transferred into the new timeline. Some theorists suggest the original Olivia's memories of Peter may be the only proof his existence ever mattered at all. This raises existential questions. Do we only exist if someone remembers us? Is consciousness destroyed or transformed when reality changes? First People mystery. Throughout Season 3, Fringe built mystery around the First People, an ancient civilization that supposedly created the machine. But the answer the show gave may have raised more questions than it solved. Symbols and artifacts throughout the series reference the First People, implying an ancient precursor civilization. The mythology suggested they were highly advanced humans from millions of years in the past. Fans theorized they were either observers visiting Earth's past or an unrelated advanced civilization. The reveal. The First People were actually Walter and future humans from 2026 who sent the machine back through time. By throwing the machine into a wormhole, they created the archaeological evidence of their own existence. This explains why the symbols matched future technology, because they were future technology. However, this resolution feels reductive to many viewers, who saw more mythological potential. Some theorists argue the show abandoned a richer storyline about actual ancient humans for the Bootstrap paradox explanation. The possibility remains that both interpretations could be true. Future humans could have encountered and been influenced by older, unmentioned civilizations. The fact that the show moves past the First People so quickly suggests even the writers weren't entirely satisfied with the explanation. The First People represent Fringe's biggest narrative pivot from mythology to hard sci-fi. Whether intentional or not, this shift disappointed many viewers who wanted cosmic mystery. Sam Weiss connection. Sam Weiss is introduced as a bowling alley attendant with inexplicable knowledge of the machine, suggesting he's far more than his mundane employment implies. Sam Weiss is a trusted confidant of William Bell, despite appearing to be an ordinary civilian. He possesses detailed knowledge of the machine and ancient texts predicting the vacuum. Sam demonstrates awareness of observer technology and the white tulip before it appears. He gives Walter cryptic guidance about the vacuum during Season 3. Fan theory suggests Sam Weiss may be a human agent working with observers to monitor Walter. Alternatively, Sam could be part of an ancient order like the Illuminati, protecting knowledge about multiverses. The show hints that Sam's family lineage involves centuries of knowledge transmission. His exact relationship to the machine, observers, and overall mythology remains ambiguous. Sam represents the show's commitment to mysterious figures who know more than they reveal, creating intrigue that outlasts the series. ZFT Manifesto Purpose. The ZFT Manifesto describes an impending war between universes, but its true author and original intent may have been radically different from how followers interpreted it. ZFT, which stands for Zerstörung durch Fortschritte der Technologie, meaning destruction through technological advancement, was written as a self-published manifesto. Walter claims William Bell wrote the original manifesto in Walter's lab as preparation for universe-level conflict. However, the Walternate, alternate universe Walter, also published his own version of ZFT with key details altered for security. ZFT followers believed they were preparing child soldiers via Cortexiphan for an inevitable war. Yet the war they prepared for was the direct consequence of the very experiments that were supposed to prevent it. Some theorists suggest Bell may have written ZFT not as a prophecy, but as a deliberate instruction manual to trigger events he wanted. The manifesto could represent Bell's program to create Cortexiphan soldiers, activate dimensional awareness, and justify government funding for his research. If so, ZFT wasn't predictive, but prescriptive, a self-fulfilling prophecy Bell deliberately engineered. Walternate's version of ZFT may have been his independent arrival at the same conclusion, that universe war was inevitable and must be prepared for. The tragedy is that both Walters prepared for a war caused by the very preparation itself. ZFT becomes the show's most perfect encapsulation of unintended consequences. Every effort to prevent disaster actively caused it. Red Universe. Threat. Walter and Bell spent decades preparing for war with the alternate universe, but evidence suggests the Red Universe posed no threat until Blue Universe provoked them. The Walternate was completely unaware of the Blue Universe until Walter crossed over and took his son. All aggressive Red Universe actions, creating shapeshifters, bridging universes, invasions, were retaliatory after discovering their Peter was stolen. Walter didn't return Peter as promised, justifying Walternate's paranoia about Blue side intentions. The Cortexiphan trials were established before any Red Universe threat existed. If Walter had never crossed universes, Walternate would have never discovered the Blue Universe, and no war would have occurred. This means Walter created the threat he was preparing to defend against. Walternate's actions were logical responses to parental desperation and perceived threat. The show subtly argues that the enemy was created by the hero's preemptive actions, making moral clarity impossible. Observer Protocol Restriction. Season 5 reveals that observers have protocols preventing certain actions, but the explanation raises questions about observer limitations and authority structures. Windmark, the aggressive observer commander, repeatedly requests permission to time travel back and eliminate the Fringe team. He's He's consistently denied clearance, with superiors claiming they're not prepared to deal with a readjustment of probabilities. This implies observer society has restrictions on timeline alteration once they've colonized a period. Windmark's obsession with destroying the team is deemed irrational, suggesting emotion-driven behavior in supposedly emotionless beings. The denial of time travel clearance costs the observer's victory, allowing the Fringe team crucial time. Fan theories suggest Windmark may have possessed suppressed emotions that clouded his judgment. This contradiction, emotionless beings showing bureaucratic caution or irrational obsession, hints at observer society complexity beyond presented world building. Observer society appears more fractured and rule-bound than assumed, limiting their omnipotence. Shapeshifter consciousness limbo. Fringe's shapeshifters evolve from mindless machines into conscious beings, but the show never clearly explains whether they have original human consciousnesses or developed new digital awareness. Shapeshifters are primarily inorganic, robots with mercury-based systems and data storage drives in their spines. They're initially portrayed as empty vessels programmed to infiltrate by copying human forms. Newton, the lead shapeshifter, shows distinct personality and decision-making beyond programming. In the episode Do Shapeshifters Dream of Electric Sheep, shapeshifters display emotional attachments to their assumed identities. This suggests they develop consciousness through extended human roleplay. The show implies they may become emotionally invested in relationships they form as humans. Whether they possess human consciousnesses copied into machines or created new digital awareness remains unclear. If this was interesting to you, think about subscribing so you catch every new video. Thanks for watching.